If you want to level up your art with a few simple techniques while also finding a little inspiration to create today, then this video is definitely for you. So artworks, welcome back. Today I'm working on 3 different paintings while using one Procreate brush from 3 different Procreate brush packs throughout this session. And honestly, this ended up becoming one of those painting days where one artwork kept giving me ideas for the next one. I will also mention all the brushes and brush packs I used down in the description in case you want to check them out too. So grab your iPad, sketchbook, tea, whatever you are creating with today, and let's paint together for a little while. So for this landscape, I'm using this Procreate brush from my Cozy and Cuddly Procreate brush pack, and this brush ended up making the grass textures way more fun to build than expected. So for this first painting, I really wanted to make one of those super cozy, colorful landscapes with lots of little textures everywhere. So as you know, I'm using my Cozy and Cuddly Procreate brush pack for this one, and honestly this painting changed a lot while I was making it. Like in the beginning, the grass looked way too empty, the trees looked kind of stiff, and everything felt really flat for a while. And I used to think the solution was adding more complicated details or making paintings more realistic. But honestly, one thing that helped my landscapes way more was actually making my Procreate brush size smaller while painting areas like grass, trees, and little textures. Not tiny, but smaller than I normally used before. Because once I started layering smaller marks instead of only using giant brushstrokes everywhere, landscape started feeling way fuller and super natural to me. Right now, I'm mostly just moving around the painting, adding little textures into the grass and trees instead of focusing too hard, making every single thing perfect. There's so much happening in landscapes. Trees, grass, mountains, flowers, clouds. And I felt like I had to perfectly paint every single detail. But now I kind of look at landscapes more like groups of little shapes and textures layered together. And weirdly enough, once I stopped trying to perfectly render everything, my painting started looking better anyway. I also really love how smaller textured brushstrokes make certain areas feel softer and kind of fuller without needing tons of detail everywhere. Especially grass, like even adding little layered marks here and there suddenly makes the whole painting feel much richer. And really, this is probably one of my favorite things to do in Procreate lately, just slowly building colorful little landscapes like this while adding textures layer by layer. It feels really relaxing once you stop putting pressure on yourself to make everything perfect immediately. And I feel like landscapes become way less intimidating once you realize you don't have to finish every section all at once. You can literally just build little parts slowly and let the whole painting come together with time. And I don't know why, but landscapes always remind me that paintings really don't have to come together all at once. Sometimes adding a bunch of tiny little textures slowly ends up making the biggest difference in the end. So for this flower vase, I'm using this Procreate brush from my I Promise to Myself Procreate brush pack, and I got a little carried away layering colors with this one. So now for this painting, I really wanted the flower to feel super dramatic and colorful compared to the background. And really, this painting reminded me how much colors can completely change the feeling of an artwork. Because if this same flower was on a soft pastel background, it would feel completely different. I totally agree. But the darker background colors behind the vase made the pinks stand out so much more than I expected while painting this. And I feel like that's something I didn't really understand when I first started painting. I used to focus way more on getting the sketch perfect instead of paying attention to how colors were working together. But honestly, sometimes colors change the whole mood of a painting even more than the drawing itself. Right now, I'm mostly layering brighter pinks and lighter colors over the flower little by little to help it pop more against the darker background. And really, I love doing this part because every extra layer suddenly changes the whole energy of the flower. I also feel like bold backgrounds make florals feel way more expressive sometimes. Like the darker colors around the vase make the flower feel warmer and brighter without me even adding tons of extra details. And I think playing with contrast like this made painting way more exciting for me too. Because now I think about paintings more like how do I want this painting to feel? I mean, like soft, or cozy, or bright, moody, or warm. Instead of only thinking about whether everything looks technically correct. And really, some of my favorite paintings happened after I started experimenting more with unexpected color combinations instead of always trying to play it safe. Because once you start letting colors do more of the work in a painting, everything becomes way more fun to experiment with. And honestly, I feel like colors do so much heavy lifting in paintings sometimes. Like this flower would feel completely different with softer background colors behind it. So for coming up next painting, I'm using one Procreate brush from my Candy Gloss Collection Procreate brush pack, and this brush made all the shapes and highlights feel really fun to paint. So for this lost painting, I wanted to make something a little more playful and fun compared to the other artworks. And really, food illustrations always remind me how important shapes are in a painting. Because I used to focus so much on details and textures that I completely ignored whether the overall shapes even looked interesting together. And weirdly enough, once I started paying more attention to shapes first, my paintings instantly started feeling more fun to look at. Like even this one. I'm mostly thinking about how all the rounded shapes are stacking and overlapping together while I'm painting. The pancakes, the orange slice, the strawberries, the syrup shapes. And I feel like food art especially becomes way more satisfying once the shapes start flowing together. Right now, I'm mostly moving around the painting, adjusting little curves and adding highlights anywhere the shapes feel too flat. And really, I think playful paintings like this help me stop taking art so seriously all the time, too, because sometimes it's fun to just make something colorful and shape focused without worrying about making it look super realistic. I also really like this Procreate brush that makes everything feel glossy and layered because it gives the painting that fun illustrated look really quickly. And I think once I started thinking about paintings more like collections of shapes instead of perfect objects, composition became way easier for me. Because then I stopped focusing on tiny details first and started noticing the overall balance of the artwork more. And really, I feel like that's one of the reasons food are so much fun to paint. You can really play around with curves, stacking objects, little highlights, overlapping shapes, and the whole painting starts feeling lively really fast. And I think this is why I love painting food illustrations so much. They always end up feeling so playful once all the shapes start overlapping together. And that's it for today's little painting session. I always forget how fun it is to jump between completely different paintings like this until I actually start creating. And really, if you have been overthinking your art lately or waiting until you feel more confident before making something, this is your little reminder to just start anyway. Open Procreate, pick a brush you like, make something small, play around with colors. It really doesn't have to be perfect to still be worth creating. Also, if you enjoy painting digitally like this, I do have art classes, brush packs, and everything I used. Link below. And if you want more cozy painting sessions like this, you can subscribe and come paint with me again in future videos too. Have a beautiful day.